About to talk to a very accomplished and achieved young man. He's a co-founder of Let Us Breathe Collective. He's also a community organizer, an artist. He does a lot. The man does a lot. Let's just put it that way. And he just happens to be my son for voting. But for the people who believe things like defund the police is a problem and things like that. I see y'all coming in. Hello, people. Hello. From the top.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to meet Damon A. Williams. I know you're a co-founder of Collective, Let Us Breathe Collective. You're the co-host of the Ergo Radio podcast, which speaks to social activism and artists and the overlapping flap of that. But what I brought you on here for is because I think that this is a very, very important time in Chicagoland. Everybody knows I love my city, even though, you know, I be out of it a lot. And I know you're not really big on the political system and politics and such and elections previously, but I've noticed that you've really taken interest into this and you feel like it's very important and one of the most important elections of your lifetime. So let's talk to that and then we'll get into specifics about the two candidates.
For sure, yeah. So, you know, I believe in liberation, Black liberation. I feel like I am trying to live in the legacy of Fred Hampton, Angela Davis, the Panthers, SNCC, so forth, right? And so I believe we got to transform this world if we want to have healthy environments, healthy communities, and for our people to be free of the systems that are oppressing and harming us. So that's the context, right? To saying like, so in that context, usually elections and the voting system has been used as like a marginalizing or gaslighting tool to social movements. So the people that organize, the people that vote in every election, do get out the vote stuff, and then make demands of the system or try to organize our people towards transformative change, they say, shut up and go vote, meaning let us do it for you, right?
Right.
And so that's why oftentimes, particularly the way the Democratic Party co-ops and subverts progressive politics, I am usually in a place of skepticism or cynicism about majority of the folks that are in alignment with the traditional political establishment. But I'm very politically active, as you know, as y'all can tell. And so as someone who has studied politics, someone who, for these last 9-10 years of organizing, have been involved in pretty much all of the cycles of elections, I believe that this is has the potential to be the most important election and political moment in the formal arena in my lifetime. I think it is a starker difference than either the Obama election, so Obama's politics compared to McCain or Romney, or even the Clinton-Trump-Biden elections, which were so pivotal in all of our memory, right? When y'all hear those things, the difference between Brandon Johnson and Paul Vallas and what that means for Chicago and what Chicago means for the national political agenda is of one of the most stark divides ever. And so, I can advocate for Brandon, I can advocate for the campaign and the platform. I also can name, I don't think people understand how harmful Paul Vallas is and how destructive his core political base is. And this is not a comparison of different policies or lesser of two evils. It's justice versus oppression. And, with that being said, I really want to talk about the way in which media and political officials have spent millions of dollars to propagandize Black people being afraid of their liberation and to trust their oppression. And so we can get into it, but before we can talk actively about the concept of defund the police or divest, invest platforms or abolition, we have to be honest about how violent and destructive policing has been to our community to appropriately have the conversation. And so the idea that divesting resources from our oppression is scarier than our oppression and being killed and being tortured and being incarcerated in mass is trickery at the height. So that was a long intro. That was a long start. I want to have a conversation with you. But that's kind of the moment and the context and how we rocking.
All right. So I got a couple of things that, because you know people's attention span. I mean, I'm definitely gonna chop this up into pieces.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
let's go with. So I just was sitting with my mother,
Yeah.
and she, you know, her people of her age, and anybody that's watching any of these campaigns, all they hear is he wants to defund the police. He's gonna cut the police. Why would we do that with all the crime we have? So first of all, I just noticed that, or I looked up the fact that we spend 1.8 billion dollars. That was the budget for policing, and crime is rampant. So clearly,
And,
spending more
and
money.
they get about an extra 200 million on top of that 1.8 in
So
terms of
basically, $2 billion
yeah.
and worth of money put toward just policing the communities and crime in Chicago. We're known for our crime, so clearly that is not working for one. But when you tell people or they hear he's going to defund the police, right away address
Yeah.
that for you
So
know the old heads and for those who have apathy who say, okay, it don't matter regardless of who is in there. I'm not voting or
yeah.
anything of that nature. If you can.
So let's talk about that. So one, to be honest, Brandon Johnson has not said his policy is to defund the police. But yeah, I have, right? But he is in coalition with Black Liberation Organizing, and the people who have been organizing in our community are saying that, and he is accountable to us as a political base, right? So he is aware of that history. I think he has an appropriate analysis of what policing has been in our community. But he, you know, on his commercials, he's talking about training up detectives, and you know, he is not an abolitionist, and he has not explicitly said he's going to defund or take away the police budget for people who, if that is stopping from voting, you know, then that's the facts. And also, Paul Vallas has and has continued to say he is going to defund the Chicago public school system.
Mm.
People are more upset about the possibility of police not getting more money than they are about the fact that defunding the schools has already happened. And he is a lead culprit of it, and he wants to do more of it. So that's first and foremost. But when people hear that, they should not be afraid of defunding the police. Let's talk about the facts. People don't realize, because people, you know, I didn't know until about 10 years ago, you know, growing up, you don't think about the city budget. It's just a thing, right? It's just, you know, they got money, they corrupt, they, you know, it's the big machine, you know, they got the ethnic communities, and whichever one owns the ward is the one that does the potholes. Like, that's what we think about. It's something that's passive in our minds.
Right.
But we don't realize that currently 40% of our budget goes to the Chicago Police Department. So 2 out of every $5, right? So whatever you think you value, police trump that. So compared to housing, compared to food services, compared to mental health services, compared to any health care in our public budget, the police department is 40% of it. And so that has been on the increase continuously for 60 years. And what I'm saying to folks who say, oh, we need the police or we need more police, is there is no evidence that supports that. The investment in policing, and we need to, you know, I have sympathy, like I love grandma, right? And I love our people. And I think a lot of us have been really harmed by watching the news every day. And we think that that is actually informing us, and it's actually counter information usually. It's a soap opera. And every day you're being targeted and traumatized with these specific types of stories of violence. And they're being overly reported. And then the character in the soap opera is the cops, who you think is the hero that's telling you about it. And we don't know that the police are investing millions of dollars into PR to every day tell you these stories, and to every day look like the ones that are the solution. You see the image, then you see the police tape, then you see the guy in the white shirt, and that's happening 90 times a day. And then someone says, oh, actually, Chicago has the most police per capita of any major city. So if you're saying that violence and crime is your main concern, police are a failed institution at addressing that. And they're not designed to. They are a responsive force. And let's keep it a buck. Let's be honest to like your people, your page right now. I'm not like on the news. The base of white supremacy nationally, globally, and in Chicago is in the police department and in its base that support it. The idea of Blue Lives Matter, the Proud Boys, the FOP, they are fascist, white supremacist Nazi adjacent, Klan adjacent, supporting racism at the purest form. Like not even the structural racism, they don't, you know, inequity, like actual bigots. And,
Right.
you know, so that's what policing is. They are not going to stop gun violence. They are not going to stop domestic violence. They are not equipped to address mental health crisis. And there are institutions that do that and that we can build to do that. And that's what we're saying to do. So the actual slogan that defund the police became a shorthand for is divest in. On a global level and on a local level, we need to divest from militarism because that's what policing is. It's a local military that has failed at its job and is oppressing people. And globally, similarly, our federal budget, we spend 40 and 50% of our budget on the military to oppress the planet and to destroy our environment. We need to take the resources from those institutions and put them into housing, and put them into schools, and put them into food systems, and put them into elder care, and put them into jobs programs, and put them into arts programs, and put them into mental health programs, and put them into restorative justice programs. And that will actually prevent violence. So
Right.
what I'm saying is, I'm sorry to talk so much.
No. I wanted this. This is what I wanted because, you know, the people that even on a basic level don't understand or see that that's what it is. So I gave my mother the best to my ability what I thought it was. It was basically that. And in a nutshell, it's so a social experiment. I said, I go to Martha's Vineyard every summer for a comedy festival, and there's no crime. And I said, you know why? Because there's no poverty.
Right.
You know, if people are not poor, they're not robbing, they're not stealing, they're breaking in.
The police department that's keeping them safe. It's not the Martha's Vineyard police.
Right, because they don't even have a whole bunch of police. So, and it's because the environment is there's no murderers on a regular basis. All of that is eliminated by people being comfortable and being, I know it's not just money and economics, but it's environment as well. So if we give people what they need, we will need less police. That's the simplest way I can tell people how that works if you divest from that. Go ahead.
And my hypothesis, and I think the evidence supports it, is that they're actually not separate. The poverty and the disinvestment in our community is not coincidental to the investment in police. The investment in policing into, we're going to lock as many of them up as we can, into law and order, into put them in their place, is part of the poverty, right? Like that is an expense on our family. Your uncle, your auntie, your father, your brother being like that, that's a tax on the community that is pillaging resources. So I would say actually the investment in policing, and the evidence stands up, actually is an investment in poverty, actually is an investment in violence. Because first of all, it is violence, right? We're talking about the Chicago Police Department. So Rahm Emanuel closed the most schools in the United States history. And at the same time, in his first administration, the Chicago Police Department killed more people than any other police department in America. During the rise of Black Lives Matter, during Mike Brown, during all of that, CPD was the most murderous. CPD is a torture factory that has been torturing people for 50 years. And so we're not just talking about, you know, there is no officer friendly. That's a myth. This is a violent, gang-based entity that is causing trauma, that is causing poverty. We could have schools. We could have investment. Here's a fact of just how our society works. We get federal, like, I want to say, it's late at night, so I'm foggy on my numbers, but around $200 million in COVID relief when businesses were shut down in 2020. And Lori gave like 85% of that to pay police overtime.
Wow.
So all the businesses are shut down. Everybody's complaining about looting. Everybody's complaining about the mandates and lockdowns and what we're going to do and stipends. We could have been funding businesses being open. That's what the money was for, but they give it to the cops. CPS takes money out of its budget. Another $80 million out of CPS budget goes to have cops on duty every day.
Chicago Public Schools.
Chicago Public Schools. When like 10 schools share a librarian. I did art classes in a school. The secretary is giving out diabetes and insulin shots because they don't have a nurse. But they do have cops. Right? So this is the new Jim Crow or liberal. This is the oppression. This is where it is. If you want Black people to be in a better condition, the first thing we can do is divest from incarcerating and torturing and killing and segregating and invest into community, into social networks, into resources, into healthcare, into education. And so for people to say, I'm concerned about Chicago's violence, and therefore I don't want to vote for Brandon Johnson, and I will allow a person who's closed down the schools in Chicago and then went from Chicago, set that system up, and moved to New Orleans right after Katrina. And while that community and city was traumatized, decimated and destroyed their public school system, and then went from New Orleans to Philadelphia and then decimated their public school system, and then went to Haiti after the hurricane and decimated their public resources.
Wow.
While supporting, you know, if you look on his Facebook, and here's another one. So I work with a lot of families who've lost loved ones to police violence, who've had their nephews and their sons shot in the back, right? And so we had a consent decree and a commission to do the full form. So people don't want to listen to me and don't want to say, hey, let's stop investing in the system and use other resources. Let's give them new policies. And so the one policy, there was only 3 out of, I think, 150 approximately that were accepted by the city. And one of them was the foot pursuit policy to get police to stop shooting kids in the back while they're running away. And Paul Vallas is an adamant, staunch opponent to that policy. And guess what has happened in Paul Vallas's family? Last year, in the summer of 2022, his son, who's a police officer for the San Antonio Police Department, shot someone in the back and killed him. And then he
shot someone?
Yeah, his son is a cop that killed somebody from shooting him in the back, and he comes and advocates against that policy in our city. So, you know, we can go. Let me slow down.
Yeah, no, it's cool because, you know, I wanted to make sure. I just asked because I heard it and I knew it, but it kind of glitched a little bit, so I wanted you to say that clearer.
Yeah.
Paul Vallas' son is a police officer in San Antonio, and he shot and killed someone in a
was involved in the shooting. He might not. He was one of the officers.
One of the officers,
but involved.
Regardless of that, he's on that force when it happened at the incident, and he's advocating for that policy to stand, that you can still continue to chase and pursue and shoot unarmed or armed assailants or suspects in the back.
Yeah, and so, you know, Brandon has sat next to people hunger striking to save schools. He's a teacher. You know what I'm saying? He's a teacher that taught the school across the street from Cabrini Green. And this other dude doesn't even live in the city. I think he's in Berwyn or something. And he's a MAGA Blue Lives Matter supporter. And the fact that this is the moment, I'm really actually excited for this moment because they're using our movement as a character, as like a villain, while not actually talking to us. But it's actually giving us a space to have these conversations because there's really some accountability we also need in our community. So I have sympathy for our grandparents and people who just watch the news and people who just, you know, are concerned for their community and maybe have not been exposed to this information. But then there's people like Willie Wilson. Then there's people like Jesse White. Then there's people like Bobby Rush who should be ashamed of themselves. And we need to really actually have a higher standard of our community, who we give elder status to, who we give leader status to, because these people are selling us out and stabbing us in the back right in front of our face in a way that I've never seen before. Like, you know, this is really a white racist movement that put this guy in the position that he is and put a nice business suit on it. And for these men to be standing with that, for those dudes with pastor collars to go stand by that for a few dollars that they get paid off for, we should really take record of that. And we need to have a standard as a community, as Black people, for political participation and for what we deem leadership. And we actually don't need this model of leadership. We need grassroots collectivity, not some spokesperson who thinks they can endorse and put a good face on it. I don't want to curse, you know, talk about grandma, but this is some BS. You know what I'm saying? This is some funky, monkey, stanky stuff. And yeah, it's a real problem that these people did that and are trying to confuse people. Like, it is active, like, psychological warfare and abuse and selling out at the highest order. And we've known it for years, but it's never been this in our face. We know they took backdoor deals or would be quiet or play both sides. But for them to muck up the water like this intentionally, and, you know, anybody who hears me knows I'm not crazy. These are well thought out political strategies. And instead of, you know, debating the merits of them, they create this strongman character and then go side with the oppressor. It's really sickening, but that's part 2.
Well, I think you've touched on what I needed you to cover, and I don't know. Hopefully, I promise. I hope I have enough data space so I can save it and upload this.
Andrew.
Um, so I think if it doesn't happen, we're going to have to do it again.
Okay.
And I know you can talk about this. It's late right now. This will be on. I'll be replaying this throughout the election. I was just contacted to come and stand with Brandon for an event soon. I'll let you know about that. And I just appreciate your time and your brilliance. It's mind-boggling that that you come from me,
Yeah.
and you become who you are. And I feel vindicated and I don't know, validated in my stance in life.
Yeah.
Because of who you are and what I created in a son. So
I love you so much. Can I tell you a wild story of something that happened to me this morning? And we kind of close with this. So again, right, like I believe that however many generations it takes, we need to create a new framework of society, new institutions, and we can do it in small steps, but we can't keep, we can't keep playing with them. We can't keep compromising our lives for the status quo. So I believe in abolition, as did Harriet Tubman. And today, for the first time, with an organization called PNAP, Prison Neighborhoods Arts Project, I was able to go teach a class, be a part of a class at Stateville Penitentiary this morning. And so I'm working with a guy, his name is Jarrell. He's been down around 18 years. And these brothers are brilliant. They're listening, they're learning, they're like doing political education, they're doing, all these programs, they're getting degrees. And he said, like, yo, here's what I think we can do, because he just learned about the campaign last week. They don't even get the news in the same way. But he heard how important it is. And he said, like, each inmate gets 30 approved outgoing numbers. And he's going to organize, like, a phone bank outreach for people inside to call their family to let them know about this moment in the election. And, like, the conditions that put them in there, they're trying to see the future generation. They don't want to see their nephews and their grandsons locked down in the same way, and they want an investment in their community. And so from inside, they're advocating for this political change. And so I just wanted to tell that story to y'all of, like, that's what this moment means. And, like, we can make freedom in small steps. And I think this is the time where we can make ourselves more free as a people. So for anybody watching this that's connected to Chicago, I am not the get out to vote dude in general. So if you trust what I just said, if you know me before, if you just like how this sounded, tell anybody this is a really important political moment. And like 5 people you thought wasn't going to go out, try to get them to go show up, because they are dangerous and they want to hurt us and they think less of us. They do not respect our humanity. And this is a good man. And it's not about him as a man. Politics are about collective accountability. He is accountable to the spaces that have been working to feed people, that have been doing after-school programs, that have been doing interventions, that have been showing up for folks who have survived for sexual violence, who have been working with people dealing with that have been working with the folks who have been traumatized, who have been tortured, who have lost their loved ones, who have lost their families, who have stood up against gun violence, right? The people that you say aren't, why don't they show up, when the people that do that all the time are the people that are standing in this moment. And that's where you should stand. So it's not even about Brandon versus Vallas, even though Brandon is better. It's about our people. So please, please, please use this time to at least just have conversations with folks about what's possible.
That's amazing. I really appreciate your time. And we may have to do this again, and we should anyway, because for those who don't catch it,
we can go anytime.
Indeed. So thank you, man. That's Damon_AF on all the social platforms. Let Us Breathe Collective is the organization that he is a co-founder of, and the Ergo Radio podcast is where you can hear from great people, just like you just heard right now, on a regular basis. And I'll repost all of this as well. Thank you, son. I got an early flight, and I'll talk to you soon. Anybody else watching this? I'm in Memphis at Chuckles this weekend. That's my part to society.
I love you, man. Thanks for doing this.
Right. Love you back, man.